Speakers Deputy Collins, and you're sharing your time with Deputy Daly, Wallace, Donnelly, Flanagan and Healy.
Healy, yeah,
Each 5
that's it.
minutes.
Thank you. Um, just noting what you said earlier on, Minister, this is not an ideological debate. I think it's both. It's ideological from the point of view of the potential of this state company and what it has as regards to the people of this country, the benefits it can give to the people of this country in relation to the development of deforestation, the money that can be brought back into the economy. And it seems to me that there's not much of a debate around a state asset when it's not making money, but when it has potential to make money, then it becomes a discussion, and it's not really an ideological position. So my opinion is that if you have something that can develop into something good and can play a role of employment, etc., but then we should be keeping it in the state as a state asset to play that role and be able to develop it into the future. If you had been at the AV room meeting yesterday, where there was the Woodland League, Impact, Peter Bacon was there, and the arguments they put up and the free access campaigns and the Irish timber industry, I think it would have changed your mind, actually, like it did Deputy Stagg yesterday, where he said that that meeting changed his mind on the situation. He came to a chamber last night and said the same thing. And I think it's just lunacy even thinking of this at this stage now, when we can develop our quilter into something much better. I think this whole issue, I think particularly this issue, sums up all that was wrong about the approach the government and the last government and the Troika has had in relation to the way out of the crisis. That it's not through austerity, and it's not through a fire sale of our state assets, and it's not through a sale of our state assets that have potential to this country, to the people of this country. I believe New Era should be a body to develop a strategy for the state sector, develop natural resources as wealth and regeneration for the Irish people, for a sustainable green industry to directly create employment, and this requires a strategic plan for the state sector and an investment by the state. Quilt is a very good example of how a state company can provide secure jobs and sustainable industry, and also create a huge dividend for the state and social amenities in tourism, reduction of greenhouse emissions, preservation of wildlife and biodiversity, and a key role in the rural economy. We are committed to this country to the EU target of 30% forestation land at present. At present it's only 11%. These proposals will most likely mean a reduction rather than an increase from the point of view of the sale of quilter. Why has the government not published its own report on a strategy for the forest sector? Is it a case that this report will undermine the proposed sell-off of timber rights? The economics don't add up, and that was really provided by Peter Bacon yesterday. And the state of the forest rights will effectively liquidate quilter as a commercial entity. What would this mean for other quilter projects and jobs like telecommunications, wind farms, board mills, supply of biomass? That report has been drawn up by the board, also should be made public for the proper debate. Again, according to Bacon, the price of 1.3 billion would be necessary to make up for the loss of 80 years of profits in quilting. The estimated value of this potential deal is 400 to 600 million, one-third to a half of Bacon's figure. Take the top estimate of 600, half to the debt is about 2 to 3 weeks' interest on the debt. That's a drop in the ocean. And the problem also that Quilter has a debt of 172 million, plus a pension fund deficit of 130 million.
Has a minute left.
That's the other half of the 600 million in relation to that. That's nothing for job creation. Not to say everything is okay with Quilter, and I take on board the points that have been made of our state companies in general. The nature of the way it was set up, and the nature of how it's got land over the last period of time, that it's not accountable and it's not answering questions in relation to when questions are put to it, is serious questions. Quilt has also been privatised by stealth, so it has sold 40,000 acres of land since 2009 to 11. So it's very, and even the case of Chevy Chase in Galway and the much used amenity where local people were horrified to see logging taking place, and it's supposed to be a special protection area. I just make the last point. This was a deal. This particular deal with Chevy Chase was with the IFUT, the Irish Forestation Unit Trust, which is Quilta and AIB in the Irish Life, who has links with the International Forestation Trust that Bertie Ahern is involved in, and who seemed to get this job during his tenure of being a politician and a TD in this Dáil. There's a need for democratic control of state companies, and that's the way forward, rather than just closing the door.
Daly, 5 minutes.
Thanks, Ceann Corla. 9,000 years ago, before the first settlers came here, the whole island was practically covered in forests. But 110 years ago, that had been reduced to about 1%, and gradually, over the past period, it's grown up to about 10%, but well below where we should for any sustainable and desirable afforestation policy. And to sit here and listen to Labour deputies say, well, sure, it doesn't really matter whether something is in state hands or not. For somebody to say, well, sure, whether it's a semi-state or a communistic facility doesn't make any difference to job creation is absolutely laughable. Has this person heard of Telecom Éireann, the decimation of jobs which took place in that enterprise as private concerns sold and resold the asset, sweated it of any value and depleted its workforce? And it's no accident that the forestry which has developed in Ireland has taken place under planned investment and under state investment. That's a sustainable way of going forward, and to jeopardise that to commercial capitalist interests really is something which will very much undermine the well-being of our forestry going into the future. And the reason... I'm going to deal with Quilcha right now. They certainly aren't. And the reason why we would be very suspect about a continuation of the sale of our harvesting rights is precisely because of the role of Quilcha already. Let's be clear about it. The history of this organisation has been one of intrigue since its inception, set up by Haughey, Burke, McSherry, handing over the Irish Forestry Service to businessmen to run as a commercial remit, which sounds good on paper, except when you know that that activity is taking place behind closed doors, without any transparency, not open to freedom of information or anything like that. We look at policies on paper where desirable forestry should be about a strategic goal to develop our environmental targets, job creation and so on. Instead, what we've had is a sell-off of harvesting right, 40,000 acres, and the money that was gained from that was used to shore up bad pension decisions made by the same organisation. And not only that, but they sold it back to themselves under a different guise with other private concerns without the public having any access to that information. And I fully and clearly support the calls of the Woodland League that Quilta should be subject to a public inquiry, that there should be a suspension of all sales until these matters are investigated. And that is the only way, really, in which we begin properly to develop our forestry as a proper public concern, as one which would be run in the interests of the population, one which is run in massive potential for job creation. I think it's really ironic that this government is discussing this the same week that we were all given our glossy booklet on an action on jobs. What a joke in terms of this government's record on jobs. Meanwhile, we have something which is a vital potential amenity and resource which is totally underutilised and underdeveloped. The points have been made in this chamber before. Switzerland, a country half the size of Ireland, has double the amount of forests that we have. They employ 10 times as many people in this industry as we do here in Ireland. That's the way forward if we're talking about job creation, to talk about sustainability, our environmental commitments and so on. And the first step in that is to democratise Quilta, to hold it to account to the public, because I have to say, to date, it has failed miserably in the task in which it was set up to achieve.